So welcome to today's class. And today we're going to be painting this gorgeous little monkey face. So I thought he was quite a cute subject, and I found his picture on Nature Vibes on Facebook. So that's a Facebook page that you can join or follow. And they have some really fun photos of animals and also nature. There's some beautiful things there. So if you want to go and have a browse later on, do that. And I've written that on the notes there, that's where the picture was sourced from. So when you do paint a picture from somewhere that's not your own photo, you should always mention the source or ask permission. So photographers do get a little bit upset if we paint their photos and things without asking. I haven't asked about this one, so I hope we don't get into too much trouble. Okay. So today we're going to start working on some white paper. So just some sketch paper or an art diary or cartridge paper, anything like that will be fine. And we're using some willow charcoal. So I like to use a longer stick like that for my final marks. And then I like to use like a short chunky bit to do my shading with. So in my little tin here, I've got all kinds of sizes and shapes because they've all been worn and broken and used and abused. They come in long sticks initially with the foil on the end. The theory is that will keep your fingers clean, but it doesn't seem to work so well for me because I always end up breaking them and using them as short pieces anyway. All right, so first thing you want to do is draw up the shape of your picture. So this part of the class is just a short section where we practice the picture in charcoal. Now the reason for that, there's a couple of reasons. One is to rehearse the picture so that you get familiar with the image, and when you go to do it in colour in the next stage, you've already done it once. So it's like a little practice run. And the other theory is that we're doing it to study the tone. So to make sure that we're checking the lights and the darks on this picture and that we have an understanding of where they sit within everything and how they work together. So you'll notice on your picture that I've drawn up a grid onto your page, and I've put quite a detailed grid on today because there is a little bit more information in this particular picture, and it's something that you probably want to make sure that you get, all the pieces in the right place. I'm doing this freehand. If you want to use a ruler to draw your lines up, that's absolutely fine. For this part of the class, I like to keep things fairly loose, I suppose, and just try to make it a little bit more relaxed so we're not getting too caught up in being too precise. When we do the colour version, we'll rule it up properly and measure everything. So if you've got your grid drawn up like I have here, so we've got 16 little squares. On my printout, my home printer is a bit dodgy, so it's given me stripes all through my picture, which is kind of annoying and a little bit distracting. So the picture doesn't actually have stripes through it like what you can see here. It just has the grid marks that are dividing the page into 16 sections. I've also got my picture on my iPad next to me, so I can see that easily. It's propped up here. I'll just show you on my other iPad. So that gives me a really good view of the picture. I can zoom in on that and see the finer detail, etc., while I'm working on it. So if you can have your picture also on a screen or an iPad or your phone even, it's just a really good way to look at the picture and see all the detail, as well as printed. Printed, you'll find, if it's a home printer, you'll find you won't get your colours as intense and you won't see as much detail. So that's why I like to have both. But this drawing or printed version is good just to get everything in the right place. Now, normally I will give you a photo with black and white, a black and white version as well as the colour. But I haven't today because I thought, well, it's pretty straightforward and we can interpret the colour into the greys as we go. So let's have a look at each section. The way I like to draw my pictures up is to segment each little partition off and then draw whatever I see in that section. And if you break it down into pieces like that, it just makes it a lot less complicated and a little bit easier to follow. So even if you do something like cover up, you know, all the bits except the square or the part that you're drawing, it kind of just helps to detach you from what it is and just see the shapes and the tones and the colours. So, you know, you could cover up all the other areas with a piece of paper or something, and just focus on one segment at a time. And I promise it'll make things a whole lot easier. So let's start on the top left segment and we'll work our way down. So here in the top left segment, we've got a dark section right on this bottom right-hand corner. In here, there's a little dark area. And then it gets slightly lighter, and then we have a light section. So we're just going to draw the lines in at this stage. And then we have a dark section through here. So you can see this is the eye, but for this part, it's just a shape. Okay, so we're just looking at the shapes. We're looking at the tones and the darks and the lights. So then we've got a dark kind of shape like that. It comes around. And then it gets light again where all the little hairs are crisscrossing over it. So it comes up the light section of that shape. So it's almost like arches through there. And it comes down like that. And then the background is all dark up here in the top left corner. And this is where I use my short bit of charcoal because I can just lie it down flat and fill up a larger area fairly quickly on using the charcoal on its side rather than using the end pointy bit because it takes a bit longer to colour in with that section. So can you see those basic shapes that I've drawn in through there? And then in this top section here where I'm drawing at the moment, it's a light area, but it's got all these little lines crisscrossing over it, which is the hair. But we're just calling them lines and shapes at the moment. So we're just going to do those little marks there and then come down, and you can see that there's also some hairs and things crisscrossing across the other light area. So if you study that and really focus on the dark, the light, and then the dark. So I've just got to make that area there a little bit darker. So what you want is a little dark section on your bottom right corner. Then we have that sort of merges up from dark to mid to a light line. And then we go dark again. So there's quite a dark area here. These are the folds of the eye. And then that merges up again into quite a light area down through there. So it's almost like stripes, isn't it? And then we come up again and we've got a dark area again. So 1, 2 dark areas coming up through there. And then as we come up beyond this one, we've got all the little hairs that crisscross over that. So there's a lot of shading. Now, if you've put too much dark down and you want to get the light back in with your charcoal, that's super easy. You just need to grab a hold of your kneadable eraser or pull a little bit off, just a small piece, and then you can kind of shape it like a knife edge with your fingers. And then you can kind of draw it back in the light if you've lost some of your light. So you can draw it back in around the edge just here like this. And that'll take some of the charcoal off and make it nice and light again. So that's essentially what you need to have in that top left-hand segment. Okay, and then you can do some little hairy kind of lines through there just to get that feeling of the texture of the face or the eye. Cool. So that's that bit. Then we're going to move down into the next one below. So I'm going to cover up the ones beside it so I don't get too distracted by what that could be, and maybe cover up the top one that we've just done. And then we're going to study this one. So this one is a little interesting. So let's carry on with the dark down into here. And as we come down into this segment, the dark gets a little bit lighter. It's almost like a triangle shape, isn't it? So it comes down through there, and then it's like a blue eye triangular shape. So that's where the light's hitting the eyeball. But what we can see is just some light coming down into that shape. And then we've got the bottom of the eye, which is this line here. So we've kind of drawn the shape of the eye there. And then we've got this other line, so that's white. And we come down here, it's quite light there. I've just got someone with their microphone on, one moment. Sorry. Okay, there we go. So that's a little bit of a light area there, and then it shades again over into this left-hand side. And we've got these kind of wrinkle marks, haven't we, that come down through there, which are kind of fun. So there's going to be a lot of wrinkles on this monkey face. And then you can see the very edge, the edge of the face kind of wanders away into the background. So we've got all these lost edges that sort of fade off into the darkness behind the face or into the back of the head, whatever's there. So again, you can use your shorter fat bit of charcoal to block in that dark area there. And you could even use that to shade in some of this here just lightly. Just run it over your page very lightly. Willow charcoal's quite soft, and so you can get some lovely light effects with that if you just run it around on your page nice and light. And then back over on the right-hand side of this segment, we've got all these little lines that come across here. So they're the wrinkles as well, the smiley wrinkles. So you can just mark those in like that and then come down through there. So that's pretty much that section done. So can you see how easy it is when you want to draw something? If you break the picture down into parts, then you can just do each little piece. And eventually, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. You'll end up with a whole picture. Cool, cool. I think I've got too much dark in the eye just there, so I'm going to take some of that out. So as you go, just check each section as you go. Make sure that you've got your lights and darks where they need to be. If you need to change them, you can do that with your eraser. Yeah, cool. And then we can move down into the next segment. So we're just going to run down the left-hand side of the picture at this point. And again, just looking at the different tones. So by tones, I mean lights and darks. So if you want to get your short, chunky bit again of charcoal, you can literally just run that around all through this section because it's quite darkish up in here. And then onto the left, it's quite dark as well. And then we come down into that bottom part of this segment and we get that lighter area. So I'll just very lightly shade that. So we're continuing on down through here with the dark. And then, of course, we've got these wrinkles that continue on from the other one where we started. And we bring those lines down through there. And then as we come down, this is the start of the mouth. So you can see the side of the mouth now has a shape like that. And just working out where that line sits within this segment will help you get it in the right place. So it starts at about a third of the way up inside this little square. I'm going to call it a square. I know it's not square, but I'll call it that for this purpose. So it starts about a third of the way up and it arcs up a little bit. So that's also a dark tone. And if you're looking for tones on a colour picture like this, you can just squint your eyes and you'll look through your eyelashes and you can see the tones quite well. I'm just going to darken off to the left-hand side of this now. And so the area around the mouth is a bit lighter, isn't it? It's a much lighter tone. it's a skin tone, but it's a lighter. If you're doing, as we are in greys, then it's much lighter grey than, say, the mouth crease or the wrinkles, or even the colour of the skin on the cheeks there. So I'll leave that light there. And then note the shape of the face too. As it comes in, it's sort of coming down on a little angle here. And then it comes down into the next segment, and under, at about a third of the way down into this segment is about where the chin ends and starts to curve away. So that this bottom left-hand area has a light section just here in the top corner, and then everything else is darker. And on my printout, I can see we've got this sort of browny, greeny coloured hair hanging down through there. And in the very background, right in the bottom right corner, left corner, it's quite dark, isn't it? So we can blacken that off and make that really dark. Like that. And then this other light brown colour is all the hair on the monkey around the face. So that's that part done. Now I know it looks a little bit weird, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, this doesn't look anything like a monkey. It will, promise. You've just got to work your way around the picture and get it to kind of put all the pieces in, and then it'll all come together. So what we can do now is move over to the next segment. So we can go back up to the top and start in this top section. And this is where now we get to kind of continue this eye. So if you look at this top square, we've got this light area that comes down, and the shape of the eye, just looking at where the light and the dark top area of the eye meet. So it's got like a V shape. It comes down through there. And on the right-hand side of that is quite dark, isn't it? So if you look at this area in here, it's a darker tone. So again, we can just push the charcoal around in there and darken off that section. That's the forehead. And then as we come inside here, it's a little darker. Let's just draw these lines in first. So what I want to do now is join up these lines. So we've got this top eyelid here coming around like that, joining up through to there. And then we've got one dark section. Let's start down here in the eyeball. That's the dark section we did in that bottom right corner before. So it comes up and across to about there. Okay. Note the angle of that as it comes across. It slants down a little bit. And so this is the eyeball, and we can muck around with that a bit more when we do the colour version, but we just want to darken that off at this point. So fill that little bit in, and then we come back up to the next layer. So this is the next section that comes around in through here, like that. Probably arcs up a little bit more than what I've made it. So does the eyeball actually. They kind of arc up quite high, don't they? It's got a lovely arch top to it, shape. And then the eyelid kind of matches that, so it comes around up like that. And then we've got a dark section there. And then it's a mid-tone up through there. So noticing your lights and your darks. It's a bit tricky, I know. And then inside the eyeball, if you can see clearly, we have an eye, like a pupil. It's a bit tricky to do because I've probably made that too dark now. If you want to lighten it off a little bit, just dab it with your finger and then pop in the darker part. So dark section there for the pupil, and then maybe a bit more dark around the edge of the eye where it sits under the lid there. And then greying off that lid a little bit because it's not as white as the whitest areas. So see how we're just starting to build this together nicely now. And then up through here, I'm just looking at the forehead again. We've got kind of dark shade. This is taking longer than I thought, but anyway, it's okay. We can do this. It's good to do it at this stage and really practice to get the drawing right. Lovely, and then we can come down into this segment here. If we had broken this up into fewer segments, so say it was in quarters, then we'd have a lot more detail to kind of fit into one section. So as I said earlier, if you have a lot of detail, it's better to break it down into smaller parts and then just work on each part as you go. So we'll come down into this segment here, and I'm going to continue this eye down. So the darkness of the eye comes down into here. It's quite round. So I can carry on with that being fairly dark. Still trying to retain the pupil, but not necessarily too worried about doing that at this point. And then as we come around, this is where the bright is. So see that section on the eye where the light is? That's the bright, that's the shiny bit. That's the bit that catches our eye when we look at this picture. So we're going to save the light for last and pop that in there. So everything else is not as light. So remember that when you are doing this in colour, you want to make sure that all the other parts are not bright or white, because we've got to save the brights and the lights for that section there. Even the bottom of the eyeball here is still a grey kind of tone. It's not super bright. So I'm just mucking around with this a bit too much probably. And then when you want to get that lovely shine on the eye, so now we can come back in with your eraser if you've got the eye ready, and you can get your eraser and pop a bit of light back in there. And we can touch that up later on too. But that's just nice to bring that little shine in. It makes you feel good when you see something finally coming together. Like that. Okay. And then we'll just go a little bit faster now. So I'm just going to run through this fairly quickly because I want to get onto the coloured version. So just again, noticing where it's darkest, we're moving down into this next segment and lining up these wrinkles. So see how all these little wrinkly lines line up with the lines we did previously. And again, you can use your shorter piece to block in some of those darks. But notice that in here, just in here under the eye, it's really dark in there. So you want to make that super dark. That's what's going to make the light of the eye pop. Okay, so if you want your lights to pop, always pop dark next to it. Everything else is darkish. So you can sort of smudge your charcoal around and make it a little darker. And then we come down and we've got the top of the nose here in this segment. So super dark under the eye, and then the nose area is slightly lighter. There's a lot of tonal range throughout all of this. Okay, and then on the nose here, because it's dark through there, I'm just looking at this little segment. Then we've got super dark section through here, so that's inside the nostril. But there's a little shine on the nose too, which is quite lovely. So it's all these little subtle shines are the things that are going to give this image its texture and depth and make it look real. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly run down. We might just finish off this half and then we'll start on the colour version, because the other half is pretty much a repeat of sort of what we've just done, but opposite, obviously. So we just run down through here. Make sure you put a nice black area in there for the nostril, coming down into the next segment. And again, we've got little crease marks running through here. So you can draw those in because they're darker, they're catching the shadow. And then on top of the creases, so where the folds of skin are, we've got light. Oh, we've gone too low. Silly Billy. What I need, I might put the mouth line in first. That'll help me figure out where all the other things need to be. Okay. So now I can just take them out a little bit, smudge it around, and just again looking at the tone and the shadings on here. And so you can mark those wrinkles in, and if you need to, take some charcoal out to get the highlights on top of those folds of skin, just to indicate the light. And then you can see we've got the line of the mouth there, and then on the right hand side, on the top of the mouth, on the top lip, it's a little darker, isn't it? So just checking all those little shadow sections and noticing where things are. I think it'll be easier to do this in colour, to be honest, because we can have a bit of a play then with more tones and colours. Okay, so that's sort of the mouth area. Probably need to highlight some of those wrinkly bits down through here. And this is the fun part. This is putting the lights in as the fun part, I reckon, because it just brings everything to life. And then on the bottom lip, so you can see we've got the crease of the mouth, and then the bottom lip is light. See, it's catching the light on the left side. It's a pinky kind of colour, but when you're doing it in grey, it's a lighter grey. So it's catching the light, and it's got the light popping off it over here, because the light in this picture is all on the left-hand side. So, well, it looks like it's coming from our left. So that's why everything on the left, or anything that's bulging out, that's why you've got the light on the eyes on the left-hand side, because that's the direction of the light. Cool. And then we come down and we continue the line of the chin. So look at the line of the chin down into this last segment, or nearly bottom segment. So this guy's got a bit of a quirky smile. It's a little bit lopsided, isn't it? It's coming up on this left-hand side, and then it goes off into the right-hand side, and it gets really dark over there because there's no light over there. I want to jump in there and darken all that off, but anyway, we'll stick to this bit for now. So you can darken off under the chin there, and then again we've got some of the hair coming around there, and then the chin has quite a lot of texture, so it's a mid-tone sort of colour, mid-tone grey. So that's the beginnings of doing this little fella. And as I said, I think we might move on to the colour version now. If you wish to continue doing the other side of him, then by all means go for it. And if you're watching this video, you can always, pause it and continue on and get the whole thing completed. I think it'd be quite rewarding to do that. But because we've got a class happening, I don't want to run out of time. So let's move on and get stuck into the colour version. Lovely. So I'll pop that away, might finish him off a bit later. So for the colour one today, we're going to be using soft pastels, of course. And I have my little board here. So this is the small board that I use when I'm working on my table. So it just fits my paper nicely. And of course, we want to do this in portrait today. You can see I've got blue tape on here. This is the tape that I use to just hold my paper down so I don't have to hang on to it with my free hand. If you're on an easel or upright, then it might be better to tape your paper down all the way around or on two sides just to keep it nice and still. Otherwise, I'm happy to use on the corners, and I do try to reuse my tape. When it's new and very sticky, it can tear your paper. You can see there it's torn a little bit already. So try not to push it down too hard, and before you put your tape on, just stick it onto your clothing or your tablecloth or something else first, just to get a bit of that glue off, because it can be quite sticky, and you don't want to be ruining your artwork if you tear it when you take it off at the end. Alrighty, so I've got aubergine paper today, or I think that's what it's called. So it's a dark purple colour. Now, any dark paper would be, actually any paper at all would be fine. I think dark would be easier to work on because then you don't have to fill in all the darks. You could actually use some of the colour of the paper as part of your painting if you didn't want to fill the whole page up with pastels. So that's why I've chosen a darker colour. I was going to go for black, but I thought, no, I'll try this one and see. I don't know whether it's my printer or not, but I can see quite a lot of purple in here. It's probably my printer, I would imagine, because it's not very good. But I don't mind that purple. It's kind of fun. And it's nice to try different colours. So I thought that would work really well. Lovely. So first thing you want to do is sketch up your grid marks onto your paper. And so today we're going to do it in portrait. So this paper is 23 by 30. This is the Colourfix Art Spectrum paper. So half of 23 is 11 and a half, and half of that is 5 3/4. It's taken me years to work that out. 5 3/4. And that will be our grid line. So we're going to do this similar sort of thing when we draw this up on here. We just need to make sure we get all the right elements in the right place. Otherwise, we're going to have a funny looking monkey with eyes in the wrong spot and all sorts of things. So the grid is a great way to draw. For me, I like it a lot. So they're my lines going down. What I'm using today is a charcoal pencil. You can, if you want, use a pastel pencil, but try not to use graphite because graphite will mark your paper and you won't get it off easily. So a charcoal pencil is great because it's lovely and soft and you can rub it off if you need to. And then my other halfway mark is 15 and half of that is 7.5 because this is 30 high. You might have a different size paper, and if you do, then measure it up accordingly. The measuring is important because this is where you get your proportions right and your sizes. And you just want to press lightly. If we weren't filling all of this in and we wanted to remove the lines afterwards, if you weren't putting a background in, then the lines are fairly easy to get off if you press lightly. This is my kneadable eraser, so I'm just showing you how I can get that off pretty easily with my kneadable eraser. If I press too hard though, it might mark the paper and stain. So try not to press too hard when you put these lines in. Keep it nice and light and soft. Rightio. And then we can also use that pencil to do the basic drawing. So when I say basic drawing, we're not going to do what we just did with the charcoal. We're literally just going to draw in, where the eye is, and do the basic shapes so that then we can work on the picture and start to put some blocking in or darks and lights in. Lovely. Now, next thing is colours. So before we draw it all up, make sure you go and pick out some colours from your pastel set. So I've got quite a few here. I'll just grab my art diary again because then I can do some little swatches. And that's another good reason to do a smaller picture in your art diary, just to give yourself a bit of space around it so that then you can either make little notes or do some swatches with your colours. So I've tried to lie these out in order of light to dark. Then I've got a few randoms over here that I don't know whether I'll use or not, but they're kind of nice and I might. So I like to give myself those options. So what I've got is white. I hope that's white. Looks like it's a warm grey or something, but if not, I can grab a white later on. But you want a white, and then I've got this pale skin colour. So I'm looking at the picture and looking at all the different colours that are inside this. So it's very brown and orange, and I can see greens in there. I don't know if you can or not, but I can see kind of a browny green tone. So these are my colours. I've got a white, a pale apricot skin tone, and then a darker orangey kind of colour. which I can kind of push around and make some mud with, or muddy colours. I've got a light grey or warm grey, so I thought that might be quite nice in some areas. And then I'm going into the browns now, so I've got a browny, kind of earthy brown colour there. And then I've got a darker brown, which is a bit more red. That's quite lovely. It's lovely and rich. So that will be for the darker brown. And then, as I said, I can see some green in here. So I've got this khaki kind of greeny colour. Now, if you don't have anything like that, then maybe you've got a brown or even a blue might be nice. You don't even have to have that colour. See how you go. Then I've got, well, that's similar to the other brown, but it's a bit more red. So I'm thinking orange. This is basically a brown picture or orange base, and orange is complementary with blue. So that's why I've got a bit of a blue stick there, because I thought, a bit of blue might be lovely in the shadows, or purple. So I think I'll probably will use that. And then I've also got some red. So red is warm, and that might be nice in some of the hair or fur. And then I mentioned in the notes red violet. So remember, we usually use a blue violet, which is my favourite dark. So that's this one, I think. Yeah, blue violet. So it's almost black, but it's got a very dark purple undertone. It's beautiful for your shadows. So that's going to be gorgeous in amongst all the dark areas. But there's also a red violet, which is as dark, nearly as dark, but it's got a red base rather than a purple base. So that's that one there. If you don't have that, that's okay. Just use whatever you've got that's dark. At the end of the day, all you need to have is a nice range of tone, okay? So you just need to make sure you've got a light, and then a few that are a little bit darker, and then you want a few in the mid-tones, and then you want a couple of darks. Whether they're blues or reds or yellows or pinks or what, it doesn't matter. Your tone is what's going to matter. So you just got to make sure you've got your lights, your mids, and your darks, and then you're good to go. As I said, I picked up this bluey purple colour because I thought, ooh, I do love how that looks, and it might be quite lovely, sort of mixed in, you know, with a bit of this brown to get some muddy shadows and stuff happening. So that'll be delicious. I also picked up this magenta. Don't know why, just love that colour. I'm wearing it today, obviously, so it's one of my favourite colours. And I might not use it, but it's there if I want to. And I've got another green as well, a little bit darker than that khaki green. Again, I might not use that, but I can if I want. So that's my palette, and I thought that's a good place to start. I might not use all of those. I might go get some more, see how we go. And it's always good just to start with, you know, a set of colours. Keep them separate too. So I just use these little takeaway containers, and that way, if you don't finish your painting and you can't get back to it till next week, you can put your lid on, pop it away, and get it out next week, and then you'll already have all your colours there, and you don't have to go back to your big set and try and remember what it was, because I remember doing that, and it's a pain in the neck. In fact, I did it recently because there was a painting I started quite a while ago, and when we moved house, I packed everything up, and then I started it again the other day and thought, oh, I don't even know what greens I use. So it's really annoying when you've got to go and figure all that out again. So what we'll do now is have a little break, and that'll give everyone time to get your colours together and maybe start your drawing if you want to. Get your picture gridded all up, and then we'll get stuck into it, the fun part. So I shall see you in 10 minutes. Okay, so welcome back. I hope you've got yourself a nice cup of tea or coffee, and we can get stuck into drawing this up now. So I'll just move my bits and pieces out of the way. It's always good to have a nice clear workspace and have all your tools and everything laid out next to you so everything's within easy reach. The other handy thing I like to use is paper towel. So it's good for wiping your fingers because you do get very dirty fingers. It's a good thing to wipe your fingers with. And yeah, just handy to have around. And if you don't have paper towel, then a cloth that's wet on one end is a really good idea too, because you can wipe your fingers clean on one end and then dry them off on the other. That's when you want to be kind of, going from a dark colour to a light colour, and if your fingers are filthy, it can get a little bit messy. All right, so let's roughly draw up this picture. We're going to do the same kind of thing that we did before, working in segments. So I really just want to work out where everything sits within the page. And rather than doing all the shading and everything, we'll do that afterwards. We just want to get the shapes in. So what I'm looking at the moment is the shape of the eye. So the eye is really important. These eyes are the feature of this particular picture. So what we want to do is, using the grids and the segments, I know I'm running into the other segments now, but just that's how they kind of help us find the shape of everything. So I can see in this, for this eye, we've got the top left corner of it sits inside this first top left segment, and then it comes down, and I actually need to bring it down a bit lower than what I've done. So this is where you can really focus on how to make everything fit. So it comes down, I'd say probably about just under a quarter inside this section here, or on this line. So if halfway is there, quarter's there, then the eye sits at about there, I reckon. So I can bring the shape of it around through there, and then coming over through here, and then the edge of the eye, so where the tear duct is, sits at about here. So again, I haven't come over far enough. So isn't this great? Because you can actually measure everything with your own eye, or even with a ruler or something if you are not sure, and get everything in the right place. Okay, so that's the basic shape of the eye. That's the inside of the eye shape there that I was looking at, that I was drawing in. And as I said, I'm not going to bother too much with the shading and everything at the moment. I just want to get the basic lines and shapes in place, because when we start to add pastel, you'll find you'll probably lose a lot of these marks anyway, and then you'll think, oh gosh, where did that go? Which reminds me, now that I've said that, when you do put your grid lines on, make sure that you pop a little mark around the outside of your paper like this, so that when you get down the track and you've lost all your grid lines because you've filled them all in with pastel, and you've lost some of your drawing, and you think, oh gosh, where did that eye go to again? Where did the tear duct sit? You can, if you've lost all this information, you can kind of measure it up again. You can grab a ruler and look at the little marks that you've got on the side of your page and figure out, okay, so that line's there, and you can even maybe draw them in again. But it just gives you those markers to help you find your things again. So it's a good idea to have those little spots on the edges of your page if you can. All right, so that's the basic eye there. And I want to put the other eye in now. So we didn't do that in the initial drawing. So it's a very different shape, isn't it? And if you look at this eye, most of it, or the top most of it, sits up inside this segment here. And it actually sits up a little bit higher than the other eye. So the left eye, on our left, sits at that height there. I'm looking at, let's look at the top of the eye in here. That sits there. Whereas the inside of that eye is higher. And if you needed to, you could get your ruler, just run that across straight like that. So you can see the top of that eye sits there, and the top of that eye is much higher. So it's about a quarter of the way down on this section. So it would sit about here. Okay, so you can mark out areas like that and really get quite specific and precise about where everything begins and ends. So I'm just looking at the shape of that eye It's like a teardrop shape or almost a triangle shape, and its highest point is up in this segment here, so higher than that one. Hoping probably needs to be a tad higher, and then down into that triangular shape, and so it sits down within this other segment, so it comes down like that. So it's quite a different shape to the other eye, and probably because his face is a bit skewy, if he's got that funny little smirk, it's making his eyes do funny shapes. But that's what makes this kind of cute, isn't it? Because he's not looking directly at us, but we've got a front-on view. So that's about the shape of that eye. So all we're doing is just getting the basic shapes in here, drawing in the main lines or marks that you can see. All right, so that's the eye. And then if you want it to, just for your own benefit right now, mark in, you know, the coloured area of the eyes so that you can see they're looking up, aren't they? So the whites of the eyes are at the bottom, and then we've got the coloured area at the top, and they get quite dark up there under the lids. It's lovely. All right, and then we're going to move down. Notice I'm using my pencil very lightly here, so I just want to move down, and I'm holding it nice and loose too. That always helps to get sort of a looser effect and not too hard a mark on your page. Let's go down to the nose. So I'm going to look at the nose on this right-hand side, my right, and it's kind of got this shape that comes around like that inside this section here. And then the nostril, so the dark nostril shape, that's important. I want to make sure we get that in there, so we can mark that in. And again, using your grid to see where that sits within the grid. So we've got the top part of the nostril that sits inside this grid here, and then it comes down into the bottom section or the top section of this grid. Okay, and then I brought it over a bit too far there, not quite to that middle line. So it comes around about there. Okay, and then the other nostril, which is completely different shape, and again it's because this face is all squished. It has, so we're looking at the dark inside shape of that nostril, and that's about there, isn't it? And then we've got this lovely round shape that sits across there. And the top of that nose comes down through here, and then almost in a straight kind of triangular line to the edge of here. You can see that? And then the top of it curls around there. And then that line, the top of the cheek or mouth, comes around through there. So once you get all these basic marks drawn in, then we can start to get some shading and tones going on. Okay. Again, this is kind of a rehearsal. You'll lose a lot of this when we put colour over the top, but it's a good way to lock it into your brain about where everything sits. We've got the side on the right-hand side now of the nostril, just drawing in that shape around the edge of it there. Noticing how far out that comes inside this grid here and how close it is to this line. So always measuring with your eye where things are in relation to each other. So that's probably the two, or you know, some of the biggest features that we need to focus on at this point. And then we can come down and look at the mouth. So let's have a look at that. It starts over here on this left-hand grid. So I'm just looking at the line of the mouth at the moment. I'm not worrying about all the wrinkles and the lips and bits and bobs yet. And then it comes through here, and then it crosses over onto the right side. It gets quite dark in there. Got all these gorgeous little hairy bits that sit on top of that. And then he's got this little beardy thing going on the chin, which is fun. So I've got the mouth line through there. And again, just measure that, the distance of that to the bottom of your grid line. And again, you know, it comes up on the left side. So it's got this quirky little bend upwards on the left, and then it sort of comes across and disappears off into the right. And then look at the line of the chin. So the line running down on the left-hand side of the chin. So it's quite light there. So again, you can see the lights coming from the left. And we look at the shape of that as it comes down and into that bottom section and then down low. It comes down nearly to the bottom, well, not to the bottom of your page, but pretty low down through there. And then that's got lots of hair and stuff on it as well. So they're the basic marks, I guess, that we need to have put in to start then blocking in our colours and tones, right? So with pastels, I always start off light with my pastels. So everyone works differently. I like to start off fairly light when I'm putting my colours down and then gradually build it up. The lighter you start, the more you can apply as you go. If you put it down really heavy and thick at the beginning, then it's harder to get more layers on top. So we work in layers and we sort of start light and get heavy as we work towards the top. So that's the theory. So what we're going to do now is block in some of the dark. And to do that, you want to be picking up your dark pastels. So I'm going to go with my red violet today, just because this is a reddish tone. If you don't have that one, then pick up your blue violet or whatever you've got that's dark. Could be black if you want to go black. I don't like to go straight to black because then I can't go any darker if I want to. So I save black if I want to be able to go darker later on. A sip of coffee. Okay, so this is my red violet. So you can see it's quite a dark colour. It's still got its plastic thing on it. So I'll try and peel that off. Different brands of pastels will have different wrappings or paper around them. I'm not a fan of the plastic because it's not environmentally friendly and all that, but it does kind of keep your pastel nice and clean. So now I can see the colour that was under there. What I'm going to do is break this. It's a little bit too long because I want to use it on its side. I want to be able to just run it around the page and fill in areas, you know, like this. But when I want to get into smaller spots, it's going to be a little bit too long. So I'm going to snap it in half, which is often a sad thing. And now I've got lots of dust and I didn't get a cloth to put my dust on. When you're sitting down like this at a table, you want to make sure you've got somewhere you can tip your dust off. It's really tempting to blow it. And like we did in school, and you sit there in the schoolroom and rub out all your stuff and then you would blow it off your desk. But it's not a good idea because if you're in your own home, it kind of gets a little bit messy and then it means you've got more work to do later. And I'm not a fan of that. So where I can, I will tip my dust off. So I've just popped some paper towel down here on my table and I'm going to pick this up and tip it onto that. So later on I can just take the paper towel and pop it in the bin. And then I don't have dust all over my house. Lovely. Okay, so I will continue to do that throughout this because pastels get dusty. So what we're going to do is look at your picture and see where it's darkest and then just kind of get your short bit of pastel, lie it down on its side like that so it's lying flat on your page and rub it around in all the dark bits. Pull up your sleeves because you don't want to get it all over your clothes as well. And later on, if I decide this isn't dark enough, I can then come back over it with black or my blue violet and darken it down even more. But I like to make sure I give myself a bit of leeway as far as lights and darks go until I get to the end of my painting, and then I can, you know, really darken things off or really lighten things up. So I'm just smushing this around. Just do it lightly. You don't want to press too hard. Just want to keep it fairly light and noticing where it's dark. So down on the ridge of the nose down there, we've got a lovely big dark section down through there. I'm coming in under the right eye. When I say right eye, it's the eye on my right. So So round through here, it's quite dark. All the way down on the side of the right side, it's quite black or dark through there. We've got some darks coming through into the side of the face from the right because all the light's on the left, isn't it? So I'm smushing all this around, and what we'll do after we've smushed a little bit is start to push the colour into the paper, and then it's going to hang on better, and then we can add more and build up the layers. So inside this other eye, it's dark down through there. This is called blocking in. I'm just going to block in all the dark bits. So wherever you see dark, even inside the eyes here, it's dark in there, really dark in there. And that's what makes the lights in the eye pop, because we've got this beautiful dark around them. Dark up around this eye, a little bit up through there. So just kind of be fairly loose with this. The way I work with pastels is I start off nice and loose and kind of just, you know, throwing colour down on the page pretty much. Don't forget the nostrils, but don't worry about getting it too precise. That doesn't matter right now. We just want to get pastel on the page. And the reason for that is so that we can then start to kind of rub it all in and blend it and get the colours to stick to the paper. And then we can build up from there. The mouth, crease of the mouth is not that dark, but I'm going to put dark there anyway, because that will then help me to build up the shadow of that later on. So it looks a bit silly at the moment, but this is just the starting point. Okay, so that's all the darks down on the paper. Once that's on, we're going to do some blending today. Some weeks we don't, sometimes we do, but I do want to do some blending to start, and then as we build up and get more texture into the hair and the fur and stuff, then we'll do less of it. But for now, I just want to start to push some of this into my paper. And to do that, I'm just going to get my finger and rub it. So when you do that, it kind of starts to blend it all in. Now, if you're on a lighter coloured paper, you might find that it's not really covering it very well, because you can still see the light paper through the pastel. That's okay, don't stress. We'll just get this bit done first, and then we can put more on. So there's always room for more, as long as you go light to start. Okay, so what I want to do is just push all of this in. That way it holds on to the texture of the paper. If you're using pastel paper, it'll have a lovely gritty texture if it's a colour fix or something like that. Or you might be using a pastel matte, which feels a bit smoother. It feels a little bit like a velvet or suede. But it's amazing how much pastel you can get to stick to the pastel matte paper, which is probably my favourite paper, but it's a little bit more expensive than this. So I tend to just use it for special occasions. Okay, so I'm just pushing this around in different directions. I'm not that concerned at this point about which direction to push it in, because I'm really just focusing on filling in the darker sections at this point. So I just want to get it all nice and soft, blended in and hanging onto the paper. And as I said, different papers have different textures. If you're using a Métience paper, you might find that it hasn't got that gritty sandpaper feel, but it's definitely got a pattern in the paper, some sort of a texture. So with pastels, you need to have a textured paper. It doesn't work on a normal cartridge or a watercolour paper. If you do want to use watercolour paper or any surface really, you can get colour fix paint pretty much. So you can buy a tub of colour fix paint, which will be all these different pastel colours, and you can paint that onto a board or a canvas or whatever you want to use, and then you can put the pastel over that, because the colour fix has this gritty, it's like a sandy sort of texture. It just means the pastel will hang on to it nicely. So see how that's all sort of blending in softly now. I've softened off all the edges and sort of pushed all the darks in, and it's looking a little messy, but that's a good start, because what that does now is give me a nice base for shadows. So I can then build my shadows up using that beautiful dark red, Flinders red colour, or your blue violet, whatever you've got. And that will give me a lovely base. All right, so what we want to do next, I like to work from dark to light, usually, depending on the subject, but today we'll work dark to light. So I'm going to look at the picture again and just sort of, even if you need to squint at it, figure out or find the next darkest tones. So not your blackest, but the ones that are sort of a little bit lighter than that. And it's kind of all the tones that are in the face of this guy. So up around the forehead and on the cheeks and in the nose, under the chin. Those areas is where the next, not as dark colour is. And I said before, I picked out that greeny colour. I'm not sure about that now. I might just grab this brown, see what that does. Is that a little bit lighter? Yeah, it's a bit lighter. Let me try this one. That's also a bit lighter. I quite like that brown better. So it's got a little bit more red in it. And it's a little bit, not quite as dark as what we've just used, but slightly lighter. So what I'm going to do now is look at the skin colour on the monkey. And if you haven't covered all your darks in properly yet, don't stress, we'll come back to it. What we're doing, we'll just want to get pastel on the page at this point. So look at that kind of dark brownish. I'm wondering if this is maybe a little bit too red, but anyway, I'll do it for now. We've all got different coloured pastels, so you might not have the same as what I've got, and that's okay, as long as your tones work. That's the main thing, is the tone. And so you just want to make sure you've got something that's not quite as dark as your darkest, but definitely not light. So this will be our kind of darkest mid-tone, I'm going to call it. And down through there. And you can sort of mix it a little bit over the top of the other dark where they blend together and come, in to be a little bit lighter. So especially on the right side, we've got that very dark background, and then you can gently sort of merge them together. And again, I'm just running around this quite lightly with my pastel because I just want to get the basics down first, and then as we build up the layers, then we'll work on getting more detail going on. Cool. And there's a bit of that in the eyes as well. So you could add some of that into there. Down through there. A little bit on the mouth. So you can just sort of, and across the nose. So the nose is that kind of, it's like a dark grey, isn't it? Almost. Blacky grey colour. But as I said earlier, if you've only got purples, then do it all in purple. Doesn't really matter. It would be quite fun in purple, actually, as long as you get your tones. Okay, so still looking a bit weird, but that's okay. Now, before we blend anything, I'm going to now pick up. What do I want? I'm trying to figure out what colour I want next. I'm going to try the grey, actually. So this is a warm grey. It's a little lighter. I'm just going to start to smoosh that around, because what I can see in my picture is a bit of green, I said before, didn't I? So see where we've got shine on the skin? So there's a little bit of shine on the nose here, on the top of the nose on the left here. And then in the wrinkles that are running down under the eye on the cheek, we've got some light there. I'm just going to use this grey in those light sections. Now that won't be my lightest light, but it's going to help me kind of find my way around and map this out with some tone. So there's a little shine on the nose. There's a little shine on there's a little wrinkle just here under the right-hand eye. Yeah, am I right? So that's what I'm looking at the moment, is just some of the shiny bits on the skin. And again, being very loose with my pastel, just zhooshing it around gently, gently. You don't need to put too much down just yet. But what I want to start to do is just kind of block in the different tones. And even in the eye, the white of the eye, we could put a bit of this grey in there. I think that would make a nice base colour to build on. So all this stuff is just base foundation stuff. It's not the final colour or mark. Now I know it looks a bit nothing at the moment. That's because we haven't got any lights in yet. When we pop the light in, that's when it's going to start to come alive and make sense. All right, so that's my grey. Okay, and then I'm going to pick up what I'm going to call skin tones. So you know that light orangish kind of colour. I've got two skin tones. I've got this little one, which I want to use, for instance, here. See there, it's quite light. So if I just block that in there and get a bit of light through there, that's that lovely light skin tone. And then I can see it here as well. So I'm going for the lightest, not the bright white in the eyes, but the lightest skin tone. So we've got some on the eyelid here. We've got some on this left-hand patch here. If you squint at your photo, you'll see under here is really quite light. And when you want to put lights down like this onto your paper, try to keep your paper clean underneath. So it'll be easier to get it to look light if it doesn't already have dark underneath it. So this is where that's why we're sort of blocking in different areas, because when you want to put lights down, you want to have fairly clean paper to try and keep the colour nice and pure. Whereas up in here, for instance, so this section next to the eye, just in there, is quite light. And then we've got a ridge. And then up in here, where the top of the brow is, it's got hairs sitting over the top, but that's also light skin in there. So what I want to do is get some of this on there and see how it's looking darker, because I've already got some darks down in that area. So it's not quite as vibrant because it's picking up the colours underneath. And that's okay. I don't mind that at all. That's absolutely fine, because that's not the part that I really want to highlight. You can press a bit firmer if you want to see if you can get it to stick a bit more. This pastel that I'm using is very soft. These are called Blue Earth, and they're really creamy. So again, depends on the pastels that you use too, as to how well they're going to sit on top of each other. So that's that lightest bit there. And then we've got some of the same light over here on the right eye. Just a very little bit of a trim around the eye. And then there's a little bit under here. It's not quite as light, but it's close. So I'm going to put a bit of that there. Okay. And then down around on the mouth. I'll just move that out of the way. Down on the mouth here, remember we talked about the wrinkles earlier and how the highlights are on the top of each of those little creases of skin. So if I put some light, just marks here, and I'll come back and sharpen them up again later. So remember, we can always touch them up again later. All we're doing at this point is just blocking in and mapping it out and building a foundation. So I could put some light sections down there. It's looking a bit weird, isn't it? It's okay. We'll get there. And then light down in here too. So again, if you squint, you'll see this side of the chin under the mouth on the left is quite light because the light's all bouncing off that section there. Cool. So that's probably enough of that for now. Now the other colour I had was this apricot kind of colour. So it's in the same family. It's got an orange base, but it's a little bit darker. So I'm going to put that where I can see all the other skin tone, or all the other skin kind of colour. And again, just putting it down nice and light. I'm using it on its side again. These are little square ones, so I can drop them down onto their side and run them around and just pick them up and put them down wherever I need to. So this one I'm going to use for all the skin tone that's not highlighted. So around the mouth, the top of the mouth is all skin tone through there. And then down underneath. So kind of on the bottom chin here, we've got this lovely light section on the chin. And, sorry, someone just fell out of the meeting. This dye should be back in now, hopefully. And then continuing that around. So see how on the chin we've got this lovely light section here on the far left, and then it merges off into the other tone of skin as it comes across. So that's what I'm trying to kind of do here. Let's just merge them together. This is just light at the moment. I'm not going too crazy. And then up under the eye, see around the eye we've got a lot of skin tone in there. It gets sort of shady and dark in different parts, but it's definitely, you know, this skin kind of colour in through there. So just marking in those areas that you can see. It's all about breaking everything down into shapes and looking at everything as a shape and then drawing the shape. Okay, so everything is just a shape. It's just a triangle or a circle or a funny little wiggle or something. On the right hand side we've got some skin tone under the eye there. Remember I said that we put that little bit of bright in. There's only a small bit of bright. The rest of it's more darker than that, which is this skin tony colour. Bit of it up in there. So it's coming together slowly but surely. Cool. Just going to put some of the white of the eye with my grey in here. I'll lighten that up again even more after, but I just wanted to mark that back in. Okay, so now it's time to sort of stand back and reassess and check your picture against, you know, what you've painted or done, and make sure everything's in the right place. Make sure you've got the shapes right. So checking the eyes, making sure, you know, you've still got that lovely almond eye shape or triangular shape, that they're going up high enough there. And now's the time when we start to sort of refine things a little bit after we blend all this in. So just, yeah, keep checking back with your picture. I'm thinking my dark colour isn't dark enough, so I might end up picking up some black or using blue violet as we move on to get my darks looking darker. I still feel like I want to put some of this green in, so I'm just going to, because that's what I want to do. I'm going to smush a bit of this green. It's like a khaki green. That's what I can see in this face. I don't know. It's in my printout anyway. On my screen it's more grey, but I kind of like the idea of the green. It gives it a bit more life and warmth. So I'm going to put a bit of that in just for fun. A bit of blue would be fun too, I think. Remember I said earlier, orange and blue are complementary, so they always look really nice together. And yeah, I'm just going to zhoosh some of this green around because it makes me feel good. You got to kind of go with what feels good too, you know. This is all very intuitive, being an artist, and we all have our own styles and likes and dislikes. So if there's a colour that you just feel the urge to put in, then, you know, just give it a go. And the nice thing is, if it doesn't work out, so if I decide I don't like this green, I can just push it in and pretty much cover it up and use something else. But I don't mind it for now. I always say for now because I know I can change my mind later. Now this blue, remember I said I didn't know whether I was going to use it or not. I feel like I just want to give it a bit of a crack and see what it looks like. I would call this a mid to light tone. So it would be lovely in these shadows here, in the wrinkles of the lip, and then down through the chin here. I just really like blues and purples in any art, really. It's just quite nice. It creates lovely shadows, and I don't know, it just makes a painting look like a painting and not a photo. So I'm just going to zhoosh a bit of that around for now, and see how I feel about that. So it's starting to look a little bit weird. That's okay. It's always very loose and very rough and a bit strange looking at this point. This is what you call the ugly stage, when you're thinking to yourself, oh my goodness, this is never going to work. But have faith. I'm having faith because I'm thinking that too. Let's rub some of this stuff in now. All right, so when you start to rub it in, if you do, you don't have to rub it in. You can leave it sitting on the surface if you prefer. But I want to blend today, and then I'm going to start putting more detail in after I finish blending, because I just want to get some of this to hang on to the paper. And I kind of like how the blending softens everything off and gives it a sort of a blurry effect, and then you can start to really put some detail in, finer lines and things like that. It's also a good time now if you wanted to put more dark into your background. So if you feel like your background isn't dark enough, or you want to use a different colour, now's a good time to do that. I like to work from back to front. So it's often easier, I find anyway, to start at the back and work forward rather than try to get in around behind something later on to fix it or fill it in or whatever. Because pastels are so smudgy and quite fragile, really, and it's not a medium that dries like oil or acrylic or watercolour, so it's always movable or pliable, which is what I love about it, because it means that you can actually come back in 6 months' time and pick up a pastel and keep going with it. You know, there's no drying time, there's no time frame, I suppose. You're sort of free to do it whenever you want to. But the problem then with that is that it's always going to be movable. So I can't sort of do a background and let it dry and then come back and sort of try and fix it later. And so, I mean, technically you can spray it with fixative and set things and then put more over the top. So that is possible. But what I'm getting at is that it's all very movable. So when you're working on something, I like to work from the background to the foreground. And that way, if I get my background complete, then I can move forward and I don't have to get around things. You know, for instance, a tree, I'd put the sky in before the tree, because if I put the tree in first, then put the sky around it, it's harder because you've got all the leaves and branches and bits and bobs to get behind. So that's the theory anyway. Not everybody works like that. Everyone's got their own method. And even with different paintings, you know, you might work in a different order depending on what you're painting. So there's no hard and fast rules. You've just got to find what works for you. So as I'm running my fingers around this, I'm looking at which way everything goes. So for instance, this area here under the eye, where all the wrinkles are, between the eye and the nose, I'm kind of pulling my finger in that direction of the skin, of the way the skin's kind of running, because that's going to help me build up the shadows and the lights and the darks in those wrinkly bits or in the shapes that I'm trying to get there. So see how it's all gone softer and more kind of blurred as I've rubbed everything in. And that's fine, that's good. It gives me a really nice background to build on. So it's like laying a foundation. So don't be worried if you are, you know, losing your, this is what I said before, when you lose your lines and you lose your drawing and you kind of think, oh my goodness, where was that eye again? So I've still got those little marks around the edge of my page to refer to if I need to figure out where things sit with reference to the grid. But usually if you do this kind of thing and you mark everything in with your tones and stuff, you can work out where everything is. I quite like what these colours are doing, quite nice. Don't be afraid to use crazy colours either if you get the urge. I'm a bit of a realist. I do like to use what I see or paint what I see. But I'm getting braver as time goes by. And I think that just comes with confidence, doesn't it? And understanding tones and things and colours. The nice thing is you can try it, and if it doesn't work, just rub it out. Go over it. You know, if you do a painting and you don't like it, you didn't want to waste the paper, you can always wash it off. So you just need a brush and a bit of water and brush it all in, and you end up with lovely patterns and designs to start again. I'll show you in a sec what I did the other day. So for the staff exhibition at ArtShed, where I was working in Brisbane, that's on, the staff exhibition is on in June, and that's when all the staff put art in and do an exhibition, obviously. And it's going to be upstairs above the shop, which is kind of cool. So I've been invited to participate in that, even though I'm not working there now, but I did for a few years, so that's kind of cool. And we've all got to do, as part of the exhibition, everyone's got to paint a circle. That's the theme this year, it's a circle board. So I'll just go and grab it, show you what I did or didn't do. Changed my mind anyway. So it's a timber circle and they come in different sizes and everybody gets to do whatever medium they choose on that circle. So for me, I'm going to have to fix it and spray it and varnish it and everything because pastel's so fragile, and that's okay. But I started off painting a rose. I thought, it was black initially. I did a black colour fixed base on it, and I started off doing an apricot kind of rose. Got halfway through and I thought, oh, I don't really want to do a rose. So then I thought, well, I'll just get rid of it. So what I did was just grab a little brush, this brush actually, and a bit of water, and I wet the brush and I just rubbed it all in different directions. And while it was still wet, I got a bit of paper towel and just dabbed on it and I let it dry. And now it's got this really cool pattern. And I'm a little bit inspired to do maybe some sort of mountain landscapey thing. Don't know yet, but it's inspired me to do something completely different. But I really like what's happened with that. And so, you know, you can do all sorts of crazy, cool, fun things with pastels. It's not just about, you know, blending and drawing. You can wet it, you can put patterns in it. This is all dry now, so it's not even, you know, marking very much, which is kind of fun. But I don't know what that will be, but it's kind of cool. I like the colours too. So it's just another, you know, option that you can do. So as I said, if you if you do a painting like today, for instance, and decide you don't like it, just wash it off. And if you've used some fun colours, you might end up with some really beautiful patterns that then can become part of the next thing that you do. So don't waste your paper. These sheets are about $2.50 or $3 each or something. So, you know, it's a lot of money to not use if you don't do anything with it. So I've got, I don't know how many sheets of paintings that I need to wash off and reuse. I might start doing that actually, because you can get some really lovely colour blends going on too, and it's a nice way to build a foundation for your painting if you've got, you know, colours already down. Okay, so this is our weird looking monkey face. He's all blended in now and looking a little bit strange. You could pass that off as abstract maybe, but I wouldn't be satisfied to leave that there. So I'm looking at the background thinking, do I want to make it darker? Yeah, probably. I'm going to see what blue violet does. Put a bit of that down. See, that is quite a lot darker than the red violet. So I might just zhoosh a bit of that around. I like to have soft edges. So when we have a background like this, it sort of disappears away from us. It's really nice just to have these soft edges. And by that, I mean where everything kind of blends into each other and you can't see the beginning and the end of the blend, if you know what I mean. So I'm just going to put some of this dark blue violet down because I feel that's a little bit darker. And I do like drama in my art. I don't like it in my life much, but I like it in my art. And so same thing that we were doing earlier is just blocking in all these dark bits again. So see how we sort of, you kind of keep going over things and building them up. So what I want to do is get a bit of drama in here. I want those wrinkles under the eyes to really pop, and I want this dark section down the side of the nose to pop. And then we've got this lovely dark area above the eyelids, because the eyelids are all these lovely little creases, and they you know, they've all got shapes and textures, and if we can just enhance those darks, then that'll make the lights pop. So I'm darkening off around inside the eye as well, and in under the nose, down through here. Keep checking back at your reference photo, always looking at that, just to get a bit more of this dark in here, in the nostrils. So because you push all the colour in, it tends to lose its darkness sometimes. So that's when you need to sort of, or all the colours do, it kind of gets a bit muted. And so then you can come back in and now start to really build up the colours and the tones and things and get some drama happening. So I'm just using this little pastel on its side again. It's a short piece, so I find it quite easy to do that. Get quite a lot of colour down in one hit. It's like using a big brush if you're into brushes. Okay, so again, it's still looking a bit all over the place. And I'm still just touching up these wrinkles again. So see how, because I blended it again, it's sort of lost its definition a little bit. But that's okay. It's absolutely fine. It's good. So you can literally use, you know, super bright colours if you wanted to, just to get this to, you know, have a bit of fun about it. I'm just going to push this in now. As I'm pushing this layer in, I'm not going to press as hard, because what I want this to do is look a little bit more loose on the surface. And so as I build up my layers, you can do the same if you wish. I just press a little bit lighter, so that what happens then is that it doesn't become as muted. The colour stays nice and strong and rich, and it kind of sits more on the surface. So that's when you start to build up these lovely layers and get it lovely and thick and rich. Okay, cool. So just pressing lightly. The harder you press, the more muddy your colours will get, and you kind of lose their brightness. So start to lift your finger off a little bit and not press quite as hard, because what we want to do is start to now define these colours and get some real depth going on. So you'll find as you're doing that, you'll start to use the tips of your pastels more than the edges, because now we're starting to get into the finer details. So, you know, putting the dark in here under the eye like that, and then bringing it around in these lines of the wrinkles that we want to get nice and strong through there, through the face. So I want to make sure that that stays nice and strong. I don't want to blend it in too much. And then as we build the layers up, we'll stop blending and then let the colour just sit on the surface. And that's when you get all the beautiful brightness and richness of the colours. Pastels have some beautiful, bright colours. I'm just noticing around the eye there's a few little wrinkles through here. Can't really see what I'm doing on there. I need something darker probably. Okay, darker. Try this dark brown. So I've got little wrinkles around through here. There we go. Down around the eye. This monkey's got lots of wrinkles. It's kind of fun. Funny monkey this one is. It's got a good sense of humour, I think. Okay, so I'm using a brown here now, so it's not as dark as my blue violet. It's a brown, and this is the brown that I want to get into the eyes too. So what we're going to do is start to build up the eyes now. And kind of got the background done. Now the eyes are inside the skin. They're under folds of skin. So what we want to do now is start to look at them and work on them. So I'm putting some dark brown in here over what I already had, which was the blue violet. That was quite dark. They are a very dark brown, these eyes. And we need to make sure that we don't go too dark, because then we've got to get the little black pupil in there, as well as the shadows of the eyelids. So make sure you don't make these too dark, because then you won't be able to see the pupils. Might have to go and find a bit of black, I think. I have the need for some black. That's red violet. This is blue violet. Don't be afraid to come back with your darks and touch things up again and again either. That's absolutely imperative that you do that. So just because you've picked up one colour doesn't mean you can't pick it up again. I'm just using a mid-brown to mark in the eyelid or the creases around the eye. So you can see around the eye we've got one little lid, and it comes down around the tear duct and then under the eye. So I'm using this little brown colour. It's not a skin tone. I can lighten up the light areas with a skin tone. It's just a very neutral brown, and I can touch that up then with darks and lights and fiddle around and make that pop a little bit. But because it's a neutral, it's just a good one to get that base colour down with. So I've just been pushing that around on this left eye. So you can see I'm kind of using it as that skin sort of colour as well. I don't know about this orange, it might be a bit bright. Let me see. There's a skin. It's kind of fun though, maybe. So this is where, you just try things and see what works for you, what you like. And we put that little skin tone down here before on that light section, but it's kind of lost its zing a little bit. And I don't know about you, but I like to have things kind of a bit bright and fun. So I'm just going to use this little orange one that I picked up, the apricot colour, to get a bit of warmth and colour back into it. And you can see I'm trying to put it over some darker colours, and it's not really taking very well. Again, this is a very soft pastel, so soft ones will be harder to get to stick. They tend to be better for just drawing, these ones, rather than layering, because you can only get a couple of layers on before they go, yeah, no more. But I do like that colour. I think it's kind of nice. It's nice and bright. It's making it pop a bit more. Just putting it down around the mouth as well and on the nose. There's a couple of spots there. You can see I'm still being not too tight with my markings, but reasonably in between loose and tight. Just being a little bit more precise with where I put things or colours, but still keeping it reasonably loose, because I know I can kind of add to it if I need to and build on it a little bit. There we go. Now, the light on the lip, I'm just moved down to the lip for a minute. Got this little light bit here. It's more pinky in the picture. Might have to go and find some pink just to get a bit of shine on there. Then the inside is not quite as dark as I had it. I'm just going to use this dark brown to mark the inside of the lip there. It's probably a bit dark. What else have I got over here? Try this one, a bit more terracotta sort of colour. Don't know, maybe. It's got a lovely little red tinge to it. Pop a bit of that down in here too. So I haven't used this one yet till now. This is what I would call a mid to dark tone. It's quite nice. It's a little terracotta, dark reddish sort of colour. And again, that's going to give me some warmth in my painting. And kind of works nicely with that brighter orange, doesn't it? Sort of makes them sing together. Warms up a lot, actually. That's nice. While I've got it in my hand, I'm going to pop a little bit of it up here in the brows. So when I get to this point, I start to sort of wander around the painting. If I've got a colour in my hand, I'll just sort of put it where I want to put it within the painting and not sort of focus on one spot. But we do need to get back to the eyes, because I said we'd do that and then I got distracted. As you do. Yeah, it's nice, that orangey red colour's nice. And then while I've got it in my hand, see those little bits of hair on the right side there? To me, they look a bit reddish. So I'm just going to use the edge of this pastel to get a nice hard line. Now, you might prefer pencils if you have some, but just to suggest a few little hairs in there is a bit of fun. And then I can come down here and do the same sort of thing down here. I know they're not quite the same colour, but I'm thinking it probably doesn't really matter that much. Just to suggest a bit of fur or fluff around the place. And even on the chin here, we've got these little hairs that come across like this. So see, as we go, we're building up the detail. Just putting a few fine lines in to indicate fur and hair and texture. And I'll come in and do more hair in different colours just to get a little bit of variation in the tone going on there. Cool. All right, back to the eyes. While I've got this reddy brown in my hand, I'm going to pop a bit of that in the eyes. I can see sort of around the bottom of the iris, it's got this lovely reddy brown sort of colour. Quite nice, but they are quite dark, aren't they? I will have to go and find a black, I think. So the eyes are where the personality is, I suppose. So I've got a black now. And what I'm going to do is just darken up under the lid of the eye. So across the top here, what we're working on is some shadow. Okay. And then just lightly smoosh that with my finger to kind of make the shadow soften off. See how the black has really defined that area now. So if you've got a black pencil, you might be happier to use that just to get that line in there, that nice fine line. I'm using the edge of my pastels, which is always a good option, but if you have pencils, it's probably easier. And then I'm just going to draw the pupil in now. Where's that sit? Got to zoom in on my other one. Ah, it's not that big. Okay, smush that off a bit. So the pupil, from what I can see, I could be wrong, but I think it sits about there. And because it's very dark like the eye, you can't really see it that clearly. So what I'm going to do is just put it in and then smush it with my finger, just dab it and soften it off a little bit. I might decide I need to define that a bit more, don't know yet, but I'll just keep fiddling with it a little bit until it looks okay. And don't forget, we've still got to do the white of the eye again. So we did that grey earlier, and of course it's not white. It's nowhere near white, but we will have to lighten that off a little bit and then put that shine on there. And the shine is what's going to make it really pop. I'm just doing a little bit of eyeliner and I'm just going to define the shadow of the lid as well. So see how that's now starting to get a bit more definition and look a bit more obvious now. I'm just dabbing it gently with my finger just to soften off those marks. Okay. And I might darken off the pupil again a little bit more. A bit hard to see what's happening in there. I'll go for my dark brown again. Not quite dark enough, is it? So then I can use a bit of black over the brown and sort of blend them in together. Eyes are tricky. You've got to notice every little detail, like all the shadows, all the little creases and things. And it's the shadow under the eyelid that really gives it depth as well. So make sure you get it nice and dark up inside there. And then soften the edges off with your finger so you haven't got a hard line. It's just a matter of keep pushing and pulling it around a little bit. It takes a little while to get it there. Okay, so that's looking okay, I think. It's starting to come alive, isn't it? And then if I get my brown again, so I can see it's like almost a lighter brown line just on the edge of the iris there. Just a little bit lighter, and then I can softly blur that off a tiny bit. Okay. And then I might move over to the other eye and do a similar thing over there before we forget what we did. You know how you sometimes, if you come back later and think, oh, how did I do that? if you're trying to do something similar. So it's always good if you can try and do it all at the same time. Well, I think so anyway. So I'm just blackening that off a bit, getting that edge defined a bit more through there. And I can come back and lighten up around the very edge of that eye. And then where's the pupil on that one? See, again, that's a bit hard to see because the shine is on it. But he's looking up, so I've got to put it up a little bit higher, not in the middle, but up a little bit because that's the direction the eye's going. Oh, I think I made him cross-eyed just then. And you can kind of soften it all off. So you just need to suggest things sometimes. You don't need to make them really hard and fast and defined. And then just a little bit of dark just again above that eyelid, just to define the shadow in there as well. Pushing that around softly. Down through here it's dark. Okay, and then around the base of the eye. So it's not that dark, but I'm just going to do a very light line around there, just to kind of define that a little bit more. And remember to keep forgetting to wipe my fingers, so I'm putting down colours where I don't want them. Your fingers pick up colours as you touch them, and then if you put it down somewhere else, you'll add the colour in. So that's why the paper towel is really good to have in your other hand. You just keep wiping off your finger, or the little damp towel, whatever you have, whatever's easier for you. Okay, so just want to put a bit of that brown around the base of this eye as well. So it's amazing how many different colours and things go into one eye. There we are. So what's happened, I think, is that because the light is coming from, I would say, left, low left, and that's why we've got the light shining in the eyes on the left-hand sides, but it's also lit up the bottom of the iris so that it's a slightly lighter brown, if that makes sense. So this is where we really start to focus on tones now, and we're really looking at, you know, where is it dark and where is it light, and this is the stuff that will make us great artists, because we need to know that stuff. That's what really makes things pop. It's what brings things to life. I'm just putting a bit of my darker brown, yeah, around the top of the eyelid there. Now I've got to come back in and lighten or highlight a couple of spots now, just to get some contrast happening. So we'll talk about that. And I'm going to, if you have pencils, then grab a pencil, because I think it's going to be a bit easier with a pencil. I'll go with my white charcoal, because I know if it's too light, I can quieten it down a little bit. But see, just in here on this eyelid section, just there, it's quite light. It's not white, but it's that really light skin tone. Probably should use the right colour. I just want to indicate to you where I'm talking about. So through here, there's a little shine on the skin just in there. Okay. And then also just inside the eye, this left eye, on here, very, very, very subtle little shine through there. So that's probably a bit too bright, but I'll just push it around and quieten it down a bit. But there's a little shine just there. Now these are the little things that we want to notice, because these are what's going to bring, what's, you know, going to make an eyelid look like an eyelid and not just a weird blob. is where all the little bits of light are. So there's a touch of light inside the eye there as it comes down into the tear duct area. There's another little bit of light just here on the wrinkle of the side of the eye. So I don't think white is the right colour. It's a bit too white. If you have a pencil in a light skin tone like this colour, then that's going to probably work better. I'll see if I can do it with the pastel. Putting it over the white's not such a bad idea because it still keeps it nice and light. See how that just adds that tiny bit of light there. See if I can get a nice sharp edge on there. A little bit, I'll have to quieten that down a tad. This is where you want to make sure you've got nice clean fingers because you don't want to be putting light in dark and dark in light. So just gently, gently, softly, softly noticing those little light areas. And then over on the other eye, again on the inside here, we've got a tad of light just through there. And then on the other side, just very, very softly. If I had pencils, I should go get them actually and not be so lazy. Pencil would be much easier to manage than a chunky bit of pastel. Okay, and then down through here, remember last time earlier on we highlighted all in here with the light. So let's touch that up again because if you're like me, it's kind of lost its sheen a little bit. So we can brighten that up a tad more. And also over here on this side, just in there. I'm having trouble getting my pastel to stick in there. That's okay. Cool, cool. And then we can pop a bit of light down here on the nose. And again, back down through the wrinkles down here. Haven't really started working much down in there. I'll leave that alone for now. See how it's starting to come together? So putting those tiny touches of light on the eyes just really brings it to life. And even here on the mouth, you can see the little shine on the lip happening through there. Just going to push all this around a little bit, soften it off. Anyway, get back to the eyes. I'm going to run over time today. I'm cool with that if you are. All right. So now we need to look at the whites of the eyes. And remember earlier we put this warm grey in there. And I'm just going to pop it back in again because it's sort of lost its brightness. So I'm going to pop a bit of the warm grey back through here. I'm using a sharp edge of the pastel again because it's a small area. So as we start to work on smaller areas, you'll need either, sharp edges of pastels or pencils just to be able to get into those fiddly bits. So the grey is not too bad. It's still not quite what we need, but it's definitely not a white. So we need to kind of soften that off a little bit. I'm just going to use my finger and dab it gently. Yeah, that's okay. And then what am I going to put in there? I feel like I need another colour. Maybe that greeny colour might work. Let's try that. So just inside this section here, green that off a little bit. That might work. That seems to do the trick. And then where we've got the shine on the eye, so I've got that. Do you want to put the shine in now? We can do it. I don't usually actually. I've changed my ways a little bit lately. I used to save the light for last and wait to give myself a thrill at the end. But let's have a go at it now. Okay, so what I've got here is my white charcoal pencil. If you don't have one of those, just pick up a white pastel or a light pastel. And I'm just very softly pushing it around on here. It's almost as if I'm blending whatever's on there already rather than adding more white. But what I want to do is very, very lightly just brighten that up a tiny bit. So this section here isn't the lightest, but it's quite light. So just press very lightly, and then if you want to make it brighter, you can press a little harder and get some of the pigment to stick. So very gentle shading, and pop over to the other side and do that there too. So the shine on the other side goes all the way down into this section, but let's just pop a bit of this white, or blend some of this white in through here first. Just note the shape of that white section in the eye there. Okay, so we're just looking at the shape, and we don't want to make it too bright. I can come back in here with a white pastel, which will be hopefully creamier than my pencil. Pencils tend to be a bit hard sometimes. I'm just going to mark in the area with my pencil where I want the shine to be. And this is a good option. If you just go lightly, then if it's in the wrong spot, you can cover it up fairly easily, just to check that you've got it in the right place. And then I can come back over with the pastel and make it lovely and bright. So that's starting to look like it's got some life in it now, isn't it? Eyes are so much fun. I love doing eyes. We should do more of them. Should just do eyes. Just do an eye in a class. Okay. So I'm pretty happy with how that's all sitting now. And as I said before, if you have pencils, you know, they're good for getting these fine areas. Like this is a little black one, black Conti. And again, I can use that just to, you know, get these outlines of the eyes through here. Don't be afraid to use pencils. It's okay. You're not cheating. Because essentially pastels is a drawing medium. I know I often say painting, but it's because what we do looks like a painting, but what we are doing is kind of drawing, really. So pencils are cool. Pencils are good. I think that's coming together pretty well. So now I'm happy with where the little white bits are. I can actually grab my white pastel and hope, depending on which one it is, that it kind of sticks. Yeah, there we are. See, that's lovely and bright. And I can just rub that on like this. Just rub it on and get that little bit of shine, the whitest part of that in there and through there. Gorgeous. Yeah, cool. Let's move on from there now and work on some other areas to finish this fella off. Just picked up my grey again because I can see there's some shine. So like we did earlier, we used the grey to get the shine on the skin because that's not as bright or as white as what's in the eyes. They're actually the brightest part. So when you're putting shine or light on something else, then you don't want it to be too bright. Just go for your warm greys or your creams. Your Australian grey is a great one because it looks white until you put it next to white. So we can start using this guy to get some highlights on, because we've got a fair bit of texture on the face there, down through here. See how we've got that shine on the skin? And if I use the grey and I just sort of rub it on lightly, it kind of picks up the texture of the paper, so it looks like it's got all those little spots on there. Might even need to be a tad lighter. Let's see what this one does. Might be a little bit too much, but we'll try it. If I just press lightly, so pastels are lovely because you can really vary the pressure that you use to get different effects. And you can use different parts of the pastel as well. So this little square one's good. It's got a nice sharp edge on it, so I can get quite a fine line. If you have the round ones, you can still use the ends to get nice fine lines. So just working on all the little creases and marks to get those wrinkly bits going on. Got a few wrinkles, this fella. I'm going to use my black pencil, but I'm not going to press very hard because I don't want it to be really black. But by pressing lightly, I can still get a dark mark without making it too black. And because there's already pastel on the page, it's sort of blending in with whatever's there already, which is kind of cool. Yeah, he's coming together nicely now. See, we got past the ugly stage, finally. Took a while. And then up around the eyes, again, I'm just using this black pencil. Another cool thing that someone suggested was using blenders, maybe not that one. If you have one with a tip on it, like this, you can almost sort of scratch into the pastel that's on the page and create like lines. So it's almost like you're taking it off, but you can create little lines with this is a rubber tipped blender. So it's just a little Montmartre set, and they come in a set of 6, I think, and each one has a different end on it. So that one's got a little flat end. This one's got a pointy end. And so you can use these too, just to kind of scratch into, once you've got enough pastel on the paper, scratch into it to kind of take it out, but create some lines and marks and things. Kind of fun. Let's see if I can do it over here. It's not really having much impact over there. But it's another tool that you can use. So if I come back over on the other eye, still got a few little wrinkles and marks we need to pop in through there. All right, let's get into the nose. So around the nose, I'll have to pick up my black again. I've got lovely dark area around here. So a bit of black around the outside of the nose. That's going to bring the nostril forward. Okay, so we need to get a bit of shadow happening around there to bring the nostril forward a little bit. And then I can kind of darken off again through there a little bit. So I just want to bring that forward and then might darken off inside this nostril with my black as well, because that's quite dramatic in there. So see what I mean about saving your black and your white for last, because then if you feel like you want to go darker than you started, you've got that option, which is lovely. Now, if we'd already done black, I couldn't get any darker. So I'd find that kind of frustrating. So I like to give myself some space to expand on my tones, even down through here on the nose where it's quite dark in there, and through in here. So you can really, leave yourself the option as you go to use your darker tone, your blackest blacks or your lightest lights as you need to. So that's really darkened off the little nostril, and they're both completely different shapes, aren't they? That one on the left is sort of like flat and squashed, and then one on the right is a really funny shaped big hole, and that goes down into these wrinkly bits. And so I can use my red violet or my blue violet just to put those wrinkles back in. We've done them a few times now, but see how you've got to kind of keep coming back and going over it again as you build up your layers, and it starts to get more and more realistic as we go. So just pushing all that in with my finger, softening everything off a little bit. And then back to the nose. So looking around the edge of the nose, we've got a little shadow here, just there. It's like a triangle shape. Bit of blue violet on there. I don't want to use black on that because I don't want that to be too dark. So now we're just sort of looking at the shapes and the shadows around the nose to get all the contours and textures going on through there. Lovely, lovely jubbly. And then a little bit down through here. A bit more on the wrinkles on the side there. Coming together well. Good, good. Okay, what else do we need to do on this nose? So we've got a little bit of a shine. I'm going to use my grey here because it's not white and it's not a skin tony colour either. It's more of a, it is a shine, but it's more grey than white. Just might highlight that a little bit there. And then there's another little very slight subtle shine just on the right side there. So the lovely thing about pastels is you can just really vary the pressure and how much you put down on your page. Okay. Just putting a bit of my grey down through the upper lip as well. And I want that green back now, so I'm going to pop a bit of green around the nose here. So see this nostril on the right? It's got this lovely curl coming across the top there. And because we've got the dark now behind it, it's bringing that forward. So you see how that works? When you give something shadow or dark behind, and then you bring it forward with a lighter tone, then it comes towards you. Just zhooshing some of this green around again. It's all about the tones, not necessarily the colours. Okay, and then I've got a bit of brown here. I'm going to put that down through there, see if that does anything. Not really. Something a bit darker maybe. I just want another little crease, little wrinkle down through here, because what we've got is like this funny little smiley face or shape. But see how this cheek area, this line here, sort of defines the smile a little bit. So it gives him a nice little quirky effect. Just going to lighten up this wrinkle here. I hope no one studies my wrinkles this much. There we go. And darken off again under this eye. See this eye here? It's really dark in there. Every time I look at it, it seems to be darker. And then every time I do it, I don't do it dark enough. So I'm just going to get in there with my black and zhoosh that around and get it nice and dark in there. And then push it in a little bit. Maybe that's why it doesn't look dark enough, because I keep smudging it a bit. Soften it off. Okay, now let's pull that down through there, because I don't want any hard lines. I want that to be lovely and soft. A bit too dark now, anyway. Move down to the mouth. So it's looking pretty all right, I think. Might just pop a little bit more of this highlight apricot kind of colour down here. So there's a couple of light spots just through here on the top of the lip, on the ridges, on the mountains or the hills that come down into there. So the light's catching on there. So that's fun, and just kind of soften them as they head up towards the nose. And then again down underneath the lip here. Ooh, black on there. That's the trouble. It's not only fingers that pick up other colours, it's pastels. So if you have your pastel over the top of something dark, it's going to put it back down next time you touch the paper. There we go. So that's okay. And then I think I need to get a bit of pink just to pop on this lip here. Just to pink that off a little bit more. It's a bit too brown. I'm going to go grab another pastel to do that with. And then we'll do a few little hairs and we should be finished. It looks good from a distance. If you haven't had a look from a distance, do it now because it's pretty fun. All right, so this is a pinky colour. I'm just going to pop that in through here. I've gone over the dark brown red colour that I had. I'm just going to zhoosh a bit across here. Might have to top that up with some white or something just to give it a shine. Let me see. Oh no, that's okay. It's looking all right. There we go. Cool monkey. Quite like him. All right, and now we want to just do a few little hairs. So can you see above the eye? I kind of already sort of did it before with my blender when I was making those marks. But we've got some little eyelashes coming out of the eyes there. Now, pencils would be ideal if you have a pencil. Whether it's a charcoal or even a bit of charcoal would do if you don't have pencils. You just want to get the fine end and do some little hairs. Now, what happens is, you see, as I'm doing this, I draw my line. What's happened is the pencil picks up the pastel that was underneath it. So if I put this down again, it's going to put the same pastel colour down, which is a pain in the neck. So you need to kind of probably wipe your pencil off onto a cloth or paper towel in between each little stroke. Otherwise, you'll keep putting down, which I am, the pastel colour that you've just picked up. Okay, and you don't want to do too many of these hairs, just a few. Just make sure you give a good wipe. And they don't all go in the same direction, notice, either. So some sort of go sideways, some crisscross over the top of them. Just a few, not much. That's probably enough on that one that I've just done. And then I'll do a few on the other side here. You can hardly see them, but they are there. And this is when you start to, really look for all the little details of things to put in. And so even though these hairs on this side are not as obvious, what is obvious is that the hairs kind of break up the line of the eyelids, so you can kind of see that they are there because the shine on the eyelid is a broken line, if that makes sense. Oh, lovely. What a nice little monkey. And then up here in the brow, see how we've got lots of hair that kind of crisscrosses up here? So you could just do a few lines like that across there just to indicate that there's some hair. You don't have to put all these hairs in. And then across here, so I'm just doing the black hairs at the moment, looking for all the dark hairs that might be popping out on this guy. Most of them are around the eyes. And then we've got a few little ones up through here. So you can do a few crisscrossy ones in those eyebrows too. I can't wait to see everyone's paintings. I think you'll love them. Amazing. Amazing. Today, I reckon. Oh, put my head in the thing then, sorry. I just want to, what do I want to do? Get that green again. Just fix this bit up here. It's a little bit lighter just there. It's better. Oh, I love this monkey. I wasn't loving him much before, but I'm loving him now. Pushing around. So this is, yeah, just final touches. Up through here, I'm just doing a couple of little strokes with the green, so it's a mid-tone, kind of hairy marks, I guess. I don't want to put too much hair there because, well, I guess you can if you want. Just keep your pencil sort of loose, and so you get all these lovely soft, scratchy little hairs happening. Cute. Now just around the face there, so I don't know if you've noticed, there's some little loose hairs here, like whiskers coming off. Now I'm going to use this green. This is that lovely, I like this green, glad I picked that up. Use that to put a few little whiskery sort of lines through there. Now, as I said before, you don't need to do all the hair everywhere. Just do a few to suggest the hair. And the human eye will then see it. Same down here on the little chin. So I did some hairy kind of marks before with my orangey colour. Just going to go over those now with a little bit of this green. And see how they kind of wisp off into that dark section that we've darkened off in the background there. So that side of the face is kind of disappearing into the background. It's called soft edges. So that's nice. It just kind of gives that a little bit of an edge. And then if you wanted to, you could come back up. Remember I did some of the hairs up here earlier. Do a few little green ones as well, just to create a bit of variety in the tone. It's kind of cute. If you didn't like that, then you can always push it back in with some black. And I might just do a few down around here as well. There's a few fuzzy ones coming out of the face. You just do some soft little movements like that. Soften all of that off. Ha, cute. Cute little monkey. Now, do we need to add white highlights anywhere else? I don't think so. Although I dearly want to put a bit on the lip. Okay, just a bit. There we go. Lovely. All right. So I'm going to call that one done for now. Might come back and touch it up again later. We're going to switch over in a moment and have a look at everybody's paintings. Just make sure you pop your name on. Use a pencil, charcoal or a pastel pencil, and that will be that. So I'll just take a little photo before we go. If you've been doing this video, I would love to see your painting, so please share it with me. Yeah, I'd really love to see how you went and any feedback too, always looking for feedback. So thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Hope you enjoyed that one. Bye for now.